Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. The UN says rival factions in Libya have reached an agreement for a permanent ceasefire across the country. The deal was reached days after both sides agreed to reopen land and air routes across front lines. In Afghanistan, 20 government soldiers have been killed in Khashrod district of southwestern Nimroz province. District Governor Jalil Ahmed Watandost accused the Taliban of attacking a military outpost. The Taliban have not responded to the claim yet. The United States has imposed sanctions on 5 Iranian entities accused of attempting to interfere in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and media groups were among those targeted. The curbs block the U.S. assets of the entities besides prohibiting Americans from engaging in transactions with them. U.S. President Donald Trump says his diplomacy with North Korea saved millions of lives by avoiding a nuclear war. During the final presidential debate, Trump accused former President Barack Obama of bringing Washington to the brink of war with Pyongyang. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden accused Trump of displeasing U.S. allies by cozying up to China, Russia, and North Korea. The U.S. death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 223,000 with more than 8.4 million infections. The second worst hit country, India, has recorded 690 overnight deaths, with the tally crossing 117,000. Its caseload has exceeded 7.7 million with more than 54,000 new infections. Meanwhile, Pakistan has registered 13 deaths overnight, pushing the toll to 6,715. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 1.1 million lives, while infecting over 41.6 million people. Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The UN says rival factions in Libya have reached an agreement for a permanent ceasefire across the country. The UN mission in Libya says the agreement marks an important turning point towards achieving peace and stability. It expressed hope the truce will allow displaced refugees to return home. The deal was reached days after both sides agreed to reopen land and air routes across front lines. Moving on, in Afghanistan, 20 government soldiers have been killed in Khashrod district of southwestern Nimroz province. District Governor Jalil Ahmed Watandost accused the Taliban of attacking a military outpost. The governor said the Taliban have also taken 6 hostages. The Taliban have not responded to the claim yet. Earlier, the Taliban claimed they had destroyed a helicopter of government forces in Zabul province. A spokesman for the Taliban said all troops on board the military helicopter were killed. Now, the United States has imposed sanctions on 5 Iranian entities accused of attempting to interfere in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps and media groups were among those targeted. The curbs blocked the U.S. assets of the entities besides prohibiting Americans from engaging in transactions with them. In a statement, the U.S. Treasury Secretary said Washington is committed to ensuring the integrity of the U.S. election system. Iran has dismissed the allegations as baseless. And in the final U.S. presidential debate, Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Joe Biden clashed over coronavirus, racism, economy, and foreign policy. More in the following report.
With just 12 days to the U.S. presidential election, President Donald Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden faced off at the debate stage for the second time. While the two American politicians did not hold back, this debate was way less chaotic as the first one. COVID-19 took center stage early in the debate, where Trump boasted success and promised a vaccine by year-end, while Biden held him responsible for deaths of millions.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
Biden accused Trump of displeasing allies of the U.S. by cozying up to China, Russia, and North Korea. But Trump said his diplomacy has saved millions of lives by avoiding a nuclear war with North Korea.
He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war.
Biden described climate change as an existential threat to humanity and attacked Trump for cutting curbs on polluters. But Trump defended his decision to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord, saying he will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs.
And moving on, Russia's President Vladimir Putin claims nearly 5,000 people have been killed in the ongoing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. Speaking in Moscow, Putin says he hopes the U.S. will help Russia to try to defuse tensions between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Regarding Turkey's role, he said President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a reliable partner for Russia. Earlier, Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev said the army liberated 20 more villages from Armenian occupation. In a tweet, he said the state border between Azerbaijan and Iran has been secured through the liberation of the Egbend settlement. Meanwhile, Erdogan discussed the ongoing fighting with his Iranian counterpart, Hassan Rouhani. The Turkish president emphasized Armenian attacks against Azeri civilian population are war crimes. The U.S. death toll from COVID-19 has crossed 223,000, with more than 8.4 million infections. The second worst hit country, India's caseload has exceeded 7.7 million, with over 117,000 fatalities. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 1.1 million lives, while infecting over 41.6 million people. More in the following report.
COVID-19 is spreading faster than ever before, shattering the record for daily global cases twice in this week alone. The outbreak in the U.S. is worsening as regulators approve the antiviral drug remdesivir. In Europe, France has extended curbs after a record high daily cases, while Greece is set to impose new curbs in most affected areas. German armed forces have been called to help Frankfurt's overwhelmed healthcare institutions.
It is important because we are not coping with tracking all the names. With the help of an experienced army and the management of the army at national level, we can avoid burdening the system, and we can have a chance to find out where the infected person is, where he or she is, and what we can do about it.
Russia's death tally has topped the 25,000 mark, while over in India, another 690 people lost their lives in the past 24 hours and over 54,000 tested positive. The West Bengal state has reported its biggest daily tally of infections after thousands gathered in the streets for a major Hindu festival.
People are thinking that the coronavirus pandemic is over. They're not wearing masks. There is no social distancing. You can see here, very few people are wearing masks. Only 1 or 2 people are wearing it. If we ask someone to wear masks, they say, there is nothing. There is no coronavirus.
Meanwhile, Australia has decided to partially lift the cap on the number of citizens and permanent residents allowed to return each week.
Now in Pakistan, COVID-19 has killed 13 people overnight, raising the death toll to 6,715. The health ministry says 736 people tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. The ministry said there are over 9,000 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of over 326,000 countrywide cases, more than 309,000 people have recovered. The ministry said some 142,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 102,000 cases. Moving on to Sri Lanka, the parliament has given President Gotabaya Rajapaksa sweeping powers to appoint top officials and dissolve the legislature. The 20th Amendment to the Constitution was passed by 156 lawmakers in the 225-member House. The amendment will allow the Sri Lankan president to hold ministries. The new constitutional clause also lifted a ban on dual citizens from holding a political office, which was strongly advocated by Rajapaksa. Meanwhile, the opposition has accused Mr. President Rajapaksa of becoming a constitutional dictator. Beijing says the U.S. is bullying countries to pick sides over their ties to China. China's foreign ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian made these remarks in a press briefing. Commenting on the U.S. telling Sri Lanka to make difficult choices over relations with China, Zhao Lijian said any attempts to pressure other countries will not succeed. Earlier, a U.S. State Department official said Sri Lanka should review American investment options instead of sticking with China. Dean Thompson said Washington offers transparent and sustainable economic development. Russia says it is concerned over Israel's plan to expand settlements in the West Bank. A foreign ministry spokesperson said Israel's projects include the construction of sections and the separation barrier in East Jerusalem. Maria Zakharova said this will mean the annexation of Palestinian territories in accordance with the so-called deal of the century. She stressed the Palestinian problem remains acute and its resolution will help develop a unifying agenda. Israel has approved the construction of over 12,000 new illegal settlement units in the occupied West Bank. And Israel has once again conducted airstrikes on the Gaza Strip. Israel's defense forces say their warplanes targeted military sites and facilities of Hamas. In a statement, it said the strike was a retaliation to 2 rockets fired earlier from the Gaza Strip. It said Israel's Iron Dome defense system intercepted one of the rockets, while one fell in an open field. No casualties have been reported from the incident so far. Earlier, Israeli jets also bombed the agricultural lands in the Gaza Strip. Moving on, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says Ankara will cooperate with Tehran to ensure peace and stability in Syria. He was speaking to Iran's President Hassan Rouhani over the phone. The two leaders vowed to make joint efforts to maintain a ceasefire in Syria's Idlib province. Views were also exchanged on the ongoing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and bilateral ties, among other issues. We'll be back with more news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Britain has signed a trade deal with Japan, marking its first major post-Brexit agreement. In a ceremony in Tokyo, UK Trade Secretary Liz Truss and Japanese Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi put their names to the pact. The deal was reached in September, 3 months after formal negotiations began. It is touted to boost trade between the two countries by nearly $20 billion. The deal largely preserves the terms under which the UK traded with Tokyo as part of the European Union. Moving on, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he is open to the idea of a military alliance between Moscow and Beijing. Speaking at a video conference, Putin said an alliance cannot be ruled out. Putin said Russia and China regularly hold joint military exercises and have achieved great success in military cooperation. Putin said the future development in this area can only be known with time. Turning to the possibility of China joining the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, Putin said Russia supports the idea, but it is up to the U.S. to invite China to the negotiations. The EU has imposed sanctions on the head of Russia's military intelligence for a cyber attack on the German parliament. In a statement, the EU said Igor Kostyukov and other Russians stole Chancellor Angela Merkel's emails in 2015. It said the attack targeted the German parliament's information system and affected operations for several days. The bloc said a significant amount of data was stolen, along with email accounts of several MPs. Meanwhile, U.S. government agencies have accused Russian state-sponsored hackers of trying to break into their state computer networks. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Homeland Security issued a second major warning in as many days. The Russian government has denied previous allegations of hacking abroad. Now, in Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari has called for an end to protests, urging youth to engage government in finding solutions. Buhari says doing otherwise will amount to undermining national security and law and order. In a televised address, he warned under no circumstances will this be tolerated. Buhari appealed protesters to take advantage of the government's initiatives designed to make their lives better. Earlier, a detention facility was set on fire as authorities struggled to enforce a curfew imposed to contain anti-police protesters. Nigeria has been marred by unrest for 2 weeks now after a viral video allegedly showed police officers killing a young man. Now, Cuba says the U.S. trade embargo has costed a record total of over $5 billion during the last financial year. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez condemned the embargo, saying it hurt the country's ability to tackle the pandemic. He said damages since the embargo's inception had climbed up to $144 billion. Rodriguez added sanctions also made it hard to acquire necessary personal protective equipment and ventilators. Originally set for October, this year's UN General Assembly vote on the embargo was postponed to May of next year. It will be the 29th time Cuba has marshaled international support against the embargo. Now, the peak pollution season has arrived in India, with air quality levels dipping and monuments shrouded in smog. More in the following report.
A thick blanket of smog covered large swaths of northern India as air quality index was recorded at very poor level, bordering to severe levels. The Indian capital of New Delhi continued its run with the dangerous air levels, with monuments and buildings covered in thick smog. The situation was not very different in New Delhi's satellite city of Gurugram.
There is smog everywhere I look. There is no sign of sunlight. The pollution is rising.
Agra city, home to the iconic Mughal-era Taj Mahal monument, recorded air quality as poor. The shining white marble mausoleum, which can be spotted from kilometers away in normal weather, was only visible as a blurred silhouette on a hazy Friday morning.
Those who have asthma problem or other respiratory issues, this pollution is highly problematic for them. It presents breathing problems to them.
This has raised concerns whether pollution leads to more severe complications among patients infected by the novel coronavirus.
The Royal Opera House has sold a painting by British artist David Hockney for over $16 million at an auction in London. The artwork was sold to raise funds amid the coronavirus crisis. Hockney's portrait of Sir David Webster, painted in 1971, is a tribute to the former chief of the venue. The Royal Opera House says it is facing the biggest financial crisis in history. The London venue, home of international opera and the Royal Ballet, is the UK's biggest arts employer. An immersive theatre show of The Great Gatsby has returned in London after a COVID-19-induced break. The accessory of 2020, the face mask, was combined with 1920s-themed fineries by guests who observed social distancing. More in the following report.
Built by organizers as the first press night of the West End autumn season since the start of the pandemic, strict COVID-19 measures were in place as the Mayfair Townhouse hosted London's The Great Gatsby show.
This is the hardest thing we've ever done, but if you sit and listen to those audience members cheer our performers on, and you see the cast members just do their job really, really well, it's honestly one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. So I would say try. I'd say fight for it. And there are people out there who need this in their lives, you know.
The The show is set in the fantasy world of F. Scott Fitzgerald's lead character, J. Gatsby, with people invited to attend one of his infamously opulent parties. In normal times, Gatsby is staged as an immersive experience and audience participation is a key feature, where audiences or guests would normally dance, sip champagne, mingle with actors, and get invited to visit other rooms in the Gatsby mansion. The production has now been reimagined and reset as an Art Deco masquerade ball.
We've had to make some fundamental changes to the show, so there are some scenes that we used to have. For instance, we used to have a 250-person Charleston. Now, it was really gorgeous to watch, but it's probably not the most responsible thing to do. So we've turned that into a new scene. So a lot of the key creatives, the original creatives for the production, came back to the rehearsal room, which again is a very rare thing.
By audience, London's theatre scene is slightly bigger than the Broadway in New York. Theatres in London saw revenue of nearly £800 million last year, with the average ticket costing around £50. As the curtain fell, audiences leaving the venue were both in high spirits and nostalgic.
Moving on, the UAE's newest attraction has broken the Guinness record for the world's largest fountain. More in the following report.
2, 1, ladies and gentlemen, let's make history. Hands up in this car, let's go!
Located at the pond in Dubai's waterfront Palm Jumeirah area, the Palm Fountain was unveiled in a launch that was live-streamed across the world. The fountain spans over 14,000 square feet of seawater.
They span 14,000 square feet in size, which is what we're trying to do today, is to attempt to be the world's largest, get the record, Guinness Book of Record for the world's largest fountain in the world. And one quite interesting part is that we have these super shooters, 128 of them, and they reach up to 105 meters.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to announce
the Palm Fountain was crowned the Guinness record holder for the world's largest fountain. It stole the title from the Bampo Moonlight Rainbow Fountain in South Korea, which measures 2,519 square meters in size. Adorned with 3,000 LED lights, Dubai's only multicolored fountain will be open to the public year-round.
I think it's another add-on for the tourist industry in particular, when that obviously starts picking up following you know, the COVID situation at the moment, but it's also just a lovely setting for residents, families, friends visiting family from other countries.
The fountain will have 3-minute dancing water displays set to music, running every 30 minutes.
Moving on, the cackling of children brings joy to their parents, but not all are lucky in this regard. Some families in Iran are choosing to have only one child because of economic restraints. To remedy the situation, hyper-realistic dolls are acting as surrogates for families who cannot afford to have more children. More in the following report.
24-year-old Maryam Aghi has brought happiness to many Iranian homes. She designs these dolls, adds color in the silicone baby's face, and dresses it to make it look as lifelike as possible. After completing her second reborn baby doll, the orders started to roll in.
It has been about 3 or 4 months since I started this work. After making my second doll, many orders have been coming in. The second doll was much more realistic than the previous one. After making my second doll, I said that from now on I can take customer orders.
Reborn baby dolls can also be used to help grieving mothers cope with the loss of a child. Psychologists and family planning experts say it's quite common for families to seek other ways to fill the void of a child.
Among my friends, most of them would like to have 2 or 3 children, but because of the bad economic situation, they cannot. They're unsure about the future, so they prefer to provide a good life for just one child in their families.
Official statistics indicate that Iran will be the oldest country in the world in the next 30 years. 10% of Iran's population is elderly, with the population growth dropping below 1%. Aghi says having a real sibling cannot be replaced like this, but a few parents are happy to provide their children something to play with.
Now, European markets are trading higher today as investors monitor signs of progress towards the U.S. stimulus deal. The pan-European stock 600 gained close to 1%, with banks jumping 3%. London's FTSE 100 climbed over 1%. In Italy, the FTSE MIB added more than 1%. The CAC 40 in Paris has advanced over 1%, while Frankfurt DAX is trading more than 0.5% higher. Earlier Asian stocks traded mixed, with mainland Chinese bourses and Australia's ASX 200 shedding. South Korea's KOSPI, Japanese shares, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index made marginal gains. Moving on, American Airlines Group has reported another big quarterly loss due to sluggish travel demand following the COVID-19 pandemic. The company says its third quarter cash burn rate was about $44 million per day. Declaring its third quarter results, the airline said its revenue dropped 73% to $3.17 billion. The carrier swung to a $2.4 billion net loss in the third quarter from a $425 million profit a year ago. The company said the American Airlines shares fell 2.7% in the pre-market trading. The flag carrier expects to bring down the cash burn to $25 million a day in the fourth quarter. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.